to call a meeting to order for the House Study Committee on the Revitalization of the Nevada State Farmers Market. And we would like to start off, waiting on my prayer person to get back. But when she comes back in, we'll do the prayer. And but this time, I'm State Representative Valencia Stovall, the chair of the House Study Committee. And I want to thank Speaker Ralston for appointing all of us to this committee. And at this time, I will allow each committee member who's present to be able to introduce themselves and give their district and whatever words they would like to say, and then we'll come back and do the prayer. It doesn't matter.
Okay, I'll start. Scott Turner, State Representative for District 21. This is Cherokee County. I hail from Holly Springs.
State Representative Robert Dickey from Middle Georgia, House District 140. I farm peaches, and I've got a long history of this farmer's market with our farm. We have sent peaches here to sell for many, many years and still use the market and wholesale. So glad to be here and glad to be on this committee.
I'm Debbie Butler, and I represent part of Columbus, where we used to have a farmer's market and don't anymore. Represent part of all of Talbot, part of Harris, and part of Meriwether County. And my husband operates one of the last remaining water-powered grist mills in the state of Georgia.
Tom McCall. I represent 5 counties over on the Savannah River. Farm for a living, chairman of agriculture and I'm an agriculture and consumer affairs committee in the House. And we have toured all over the state in past years looking at farmers markets and how to get them back going. And I appreciate Mr. Valencia for putting this together. Maybe we can make all this out here work. This is the farmers market in the southeast. And we're going to need everybody that utilizes it help and giving us ideas on what we need to do.
I'm Bonnie Wilson with Sutherland Food Service, and I serve as the board chair for the Atlanta Produce Dealers Association, which is a group here on the market made up of the merchants here and also businesses that we all are doing business with out in the community. And Sutherland's has been here since the opening of this market, and we came from the market in West End, and we actually started right across from the Capitol when our business started in 1947. So I've grown up here at the farmers market, literally.
And I also like to take this time to recognize some of our elected officials that have joined us this morning. One is Representative Rhonda Burno. She's our chair of the Clayton County delegation, legislative delegation. And also we have our school board member here, school board member Benjamin Strader. All right, and now we'll have prayer by Dr. LaWanda Falanda. Good morning. Good morning. If everybody could just turn around.
Let us go to the throne. Our Father, our Father. Father, we come this morning just to say thank you. Realizing that this is the day that you have made, and truly we are going to rejoice in it. Father, we just want to say thank you. Thank you for the things that you're doing and things that you're about to do. But now, Lord, we need instruction. We need instruction as you have given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We need the instruction as you have gave to Adam and Eve, not to eat from the forbidden tree. We need your instruction now, Lord. We need you to instruct us as you did Elijah to go to the widow woman. But she only had a vessel of oil and meal. We need you right now, Lord. We all need you for one thing or another. Mine's not like theirs, and theirs not like mine. But I realize that you are God, and you do all things according to your will. Now, Father, send your Shekinah angel in this room, that we may be on one accord, that we may receive the fruit of your heaven, and you will feed us bread of heaven until we want no more. Now touch in a special manner right now. Go out here and touch this land, and let it become as plentiful as you have in your will. And we say this prayer in your Son's Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So we're excited about today, especially when you think about the revitalization of the Atlanta State Farmers Market. I want to kind of go over what the resolution that actually created this House Study Committee. So, and kind of give you some background. So a couple of years ago, maybe a year or two ago, and this is not the first time the study committee has been done on the farmers market. There was one back in, I think, 2005. Actually, the Livable Community Initiative had given money to the city of Forest Park to be able to do a study committee as well. And so they did a fantastic job. I was able to look over some of the information that they presented. But now we're in 2018. And so we're saying that, you know, as a community and representing the community, we want to see something here that can bring the whole entire community here. And also look at additional ways that revenue can be generated, not just for the state, but even locally here for Clayton County. And then being that this is the largest market out of the 9 markets across the state that the state owns, this could be the catapult us into what the other markets can maybe look like, even if it's on a smaller scale. So this particular study committee was created looking at over the 40 years of history with this market serving Atlanta, and being that it has faced a sharp decline in attracting individual consumers. And today's society has become more focused on eating organic and ethnically diverse foods. The farmers market will offer a large variety of produce and other items not readily available in the local grocery. And due to the proximity to the Atlanta Jackson Airport and the ease of access to the location for the citizens of Atlanta and also the entire state, the redevelopment of the Atlanta State Farmers Market would offer additional agro-tourism opportunities such as educational programs, festivals, state fairs, and other family and tourist-oriented activities that will enhance the state's recognition as the #1 state for business. Also, the State Farmers Market could serve as an excellent educational opportunity for urban Atlanta residents, with the important goals of teaching our citizens about Georgia's farming industry and its importance in the areas of health and commerce. And the introduction of technological advances, advertising, and increased aesthetic appeal, and focus on making the Atlanta State Farmers Market an industrial and consumer-friendly hub would provide a unique blend to attract more farmers, more business owners, restaurant owners, and consumers. So this study committee was created, composed of 9 members. I know we have 1 member that's on the way, 2 of our members, Don Burnett and Representative Sam Watson won't be able to make it. Representative Chairwoman Penny Houston is on the way. And so it's made up of 9 members. And so our primary job is to make recommendations to the Speaker's office. So we're not here to make any final decisions on what's going to happen. That's why we're having an open meeting so we can hear the feedback. We have already started an online survey. As of yesterday, we had 265 people that have responded, along with maybe about 30 paper copies that I had that have to be inputted in. So and we've sent all the information out to the local government as well, asking them to make sure they get the information out to the citizens. And it's very important that we hear from the citizens as well. It's very, very important because this is our market. This is our jewel here in Clayton County, even in the state of Georgia. When you look at the proximity to potential for the increase of revenue. So currently, 84% of the Atlanta farmers market revenue is approximately about $5.7 million, and 64% of that total expenditures is about $2.56 million, which is about a net profit of $3.14 million. So the market is generating funds, but we want to generate more funds. And we want to make it a friendly place for consumers to be able to come in tourism. Georgia is very huge for tourism, so why not make sure we're increasing that as well? So if everyone has the agenda, and I just saw that we have another one of our elected officials who has come in, Senator Gail Davenport, who is also a part of our Clayton County legislative delegation as well. All right, so what we would do, how the flow of the agenda would go, we will hear a presentation from the Department of Agriculture, because I think it's important, as this is our first meeting in the Catalina Foundation, for those who might not know about how the market came about, what some of the things, and some of you all probably rode around and saw some of the construction that's going on. And so a lot of times I hear people say, what's going on over at the farmer's market? And so the Department of Agriculture will touch on the history, the purpose of the market, the current state of the market. And then next we will hear from a Georgia farmer's overview with Mr. Keith Parker. And then we will hear from Atlanta Produce Dealers Association, who is an association that maintains in charge of the grounds here at, not necessarily the grounds, but in charge here at the farmer's market. They'll go into more detail about what they actually do. And so right now we'll go ahead and start with Matthew Kalinsky, who's representing the Department of Agriculture. And I also want to thank Bo Warren from Commissioner Black's office for his assistance, and also Tammy Burnett for her assistance as well with the Atlanta Produce Dealers Association.
Wonderful, thank you all. Thank you, Chairman Stovall, for bringing this group together and being able to talk about the farmers markets. Again, my name is Matthew Kalinsky, and I'll turn around here just a second when I start this. I've worked at the Department of Agriculture for about 11 years now. And when I first started, I work in the marketing division with the Georgia Grown program. When I first started, we didn't have a marketing program. I'll try to walk around here so I'm not facing my back to you. We didn't have a marketing division. What we had was called the markets division. And our number one goal was managing these state farmers markets, and that's pretty much all we did. When Commissioner Black came in roughly 8 years ago, he wanted us to kind of create a marketing division in addition to the management of these markets. But how can we look at these markets and look at the resources that the Department of Agriculture has, that Georgia has, and really take it to the next level and be able to not only provide better products to Georgia consumers, but really help Georgia farmers sell more of their product. We really see our mission in the marketing division as being an economic development mission. And with that, in addition to that, when I'm not at the Georgia Department of Agriculture, I'm currently president of the board of the Sweet Auburn Curb Market, or the municipal market on Edgewood in downtown Atlanta, if you're familiar with that. And there's a lot of relationships between that market and this market that happens as well with our other state markets, which I'll get into briefly. But this is kind of just a general overview. If you have any specific questions for me, I've got my card in the back. I'll be happy to answer those questions, or after this if you have any. But as Bonnie mentioned, the first Atlanta Farmers Market was located in downtown Atlanta. I don't exactly know where this is, but I'm assuming that's the Hurt building back there in the background. And this is probably started in the late 19th century all the way up to the 1940s, where it was then replaced by the first state property managed farmers market off of Murphy Avenue in 1940. And you can see some pictures of that. And Bonnie, is that where Sutherland started back then?
We started at the corner of Trinity and Washington, across the street from the Capitol, in a little tin shack. So
Wow.
we weren't big enough to be on the market.
You started there. Okay, wonderful. And then this Forest Park market was completed in 1959. And it's 155 acres. And it was really kind of the best example of a farmer's market in the country. It was the top of the line farmer's market. It had these huge wide open sheds, it had great transportation access with the highways, and it had plenty of room for wholesale cooler space and being able to develop. Now again, it was designed for trucks and for produce traffic of 1959. It had a great construction so that it was set up so that it could grow and meet all of our needs going into the future. But again, many parts of this market were designed for, mid-20th century agricultural distribution, not this 21st agricultural distribution that we're going into. And just to give you an idea of where we are here, I don't know if there's a little laser thing on this, I won't try it. But that green box in the corner, that's our garden center. And then this area under the blue box that we're facing on the west side of the market, that's what we call the sheds. Those are the open areas. And then we have the hill, which is up the hill, and that's mostly the large-scale produce distribution. That's our wholesale houses that are here. One of the great things about this market is we say it's one of the few places in the country where you could show up and you could buy a tomato or you could buy a truckload of tomatoes. I mean, the scale here is really phenomenal and amazing. You can have a farmer show up for a day, or a farmer can bring an entire truckload in and be able to sell produce at this market. In addition to that, what you don't quite see from this picture, and which we haven't had too many studies on, is the huge halo effect that's created by this market. Because this market has been here, you have businesses that have grown up around the market that are here because this market exists. Because it is the central place for produce in the Southeast, businesses, whether they're processors or other distributors, or you have Kroger that's right down the street as well, that opens a new distribution facility at Fort Gillem. That's it. I knew people would know. So you have this wonderful halo effect that's created with this market. This is kind of a map, so you can kind of see the different buildings that are there. One of the things to notice is we're in the administrative building, which is right in the middle, that kind of yellow with the green dot next to the former restaurant. But also there's an exhibit hall on this property that has regular events pretty much almost every weekend. Again, there's the garden center that's there. We have the Market Grocery Company that's in the southeast corner of the market. That provides wholesale grocery items. That's a great addition to the produce distribution that occurs at this market. But it's more than just produce distribution. You have large processing facilities. You have banana rooms where they gas bananas. You have places where they process the corn and they're able to break it down. There was a statistic I heard before. I can't back this up, but I heard that if you had any vegetable in the Atlanta area, 70% chance that that vegetable came through this market at some point. So you've got distributors here that focus specifically on food service, where the products go to restaurants and to cafeterias. You have people that have institutional buyers. A lot of products from this market go on to schools throughout the region. And then you also have those retail people that service retail buyers. Another important thing to think about this market and why it has been so effective over the past 60 years is it's really kind of a nexus of the agricultural distribution. It's an industry hub. Businesses want to be at this market or nearby this market because they can do business with each other. They're able to buy and sell from each other very easily, which allows commerce to be far more effective at this location. So there's great value to being nearby and on this market, which, and if you look at other state locations, they don't have that benefit. And we can email this out to everyone that would like a copy of this. So there's a whole assortment of products that are available at this market, and it's really unique in the Southeast. We call it the Southeast Refrigerator because it's got 4,700 square feet of cooler space in it. Over 800,000 square feet of just climate-controlled space. An additional 75,000 square feet of cooler space is added in our new addition that's going up in the shed area. So it's really, if you think about that, it's the cooler for the entire southeastern United States. I mean, product is kept here and moved here for the entire region. There's only a few terminal markets like it in the country, and it's a very unique and valuable piece of property. So the market revenue, as Chairman Stovall mentioned earlier, was $5.6 million. That's the revenue that was simply created by this market itself. A lot of that revenue comes from leases for the wholesale tenants. There's also daily gate fees, shed fees that are collected on the market that lead up to that amount. And then, so there's a great revenue that's coming in from this market. Now, what that also doesn't show is this market only costs the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture is able to operate this market at roughly $3.5 million. So it's generating a profit to the state of Georgia for the operation of this market. And it has been for a number of different years. The Atlanta market is open 24/7. Every day of the year except for Christmas. And that's kind of important to know because the Department of Agriculture stacks it that entire time. We've got people working at the gatehouse. We've got agreements for security. We have maintenance people here that are on the clock 24/7 making sure this market operates. Most of the business at this market, and I think I've got another slide that mentions this, happens early in the morning between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. when all of the trucks come in to load up the produce to go out to the restaurants before they open or to the grocery stores before traffic comes out in Atlanta. So it's a very busy market. There's a very good example of that. So a wholesale market, the wholesalers are working from 4 a.m. and then they'll close early in the afternoon because they're open all morning. Shed tenants are usually open from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. So a lot occurs at this market in the dark, in the morning, before the sun even comes up. The garden center is a very valuable resource here at the department, at the market. It distributes all sorts of different horticultural products, from pots, plants. It has a wholesale business where you have people like Supersod selling products directly to landscapers around the state, but also it's available for backyard gardeners to come and pick up products for their stores. I can tell you my family for decades has been coming here to pick up our backyard garden items. Another big thing that I've got a couple other pretty pictures because the garden center's pretty, so that's a good thing to include in here. That's an example of it. If you come by here on Valentine's Day, there is traffic coming out of the market. There's a line going around the market for people coming in to buy roses and other plants. The seasonal products here, especially around the fall with pumpkins and Christmas trees, is another big part of the commerce that happens here in Georgia. Again, my family for decades has been coming down here to pick up their Christmas tree. You get the best deal on a Christmas tree here at the Atlanta State Farmers Market. You get a very high quality tree. And a lot of times individuals can come and buy a tree like my family, but also they do a large wholesale business, both for nonprofit resellers, but a lot of schools come to the Atlanta market to get truckloads of products brought out to their schools so that they can sell in those pumpkin patches, that sort of thing. So it's really a nexus for the seasonal items for the southeastern region as well. So as I said, this is very unique to the region. It's a terminal market, which means it's not kind of that traditional farmers market that we may all think of as a community farmers market. It's not a place where farmers necessarily have to show up and just sell their products directly to a consumer. This is where the product ends up when it's coming from the farm and from different distribution areas, and then it's then redistributed out throughout the country. I even heard stories of distributors at this market that send produce down to Fort Lauderdale, where they put it on a cruise ship and it's then taken to the Caribbean. So if you travel to the Caribbean, a lot of that produce is coming from the Atlanta market because we're the closest large terminal hub for agricultural products and produce. We're one of only 13 terminal markets. I can tell you we're one of the largest across the United States. It's really a valuable asset to Georgia and to the Southeast. And again, we have tenants here that service areas all up and down, all throughout the Southeast, whether that's Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and they service them from this market with overnight truck deliveries. So there could be restaurants in North Carolina that are every day getting produce deliveries from this market because it is the largest terminal market in the region. So just to kind of give you an idea of how this produce distribution works. I know a lot of you are pretty familiar with this, and I'm sorry I used carrots as opposed to peaches. The carrots are picked at the farm, right? And then they may have a packing facility on that farm where that produce is packed, or it may be nearby the farm, where the produce is maybe first processed, cleaned, washed, that sort of thing. But then it all comes here to the Atlanta terminal market, where then it is repacked or sometimes further processed. Like if you're going to get a carrot tray at a Publix, there may be a processor here that further processes those carrots or puts them into those little trays that you buy. There could be a processor here that does that. And then they're redistributed out to those restaurants or food service locations from this market. So if you're here at 6 a.m. in the morning, the truck traffic here, as you can imagine, is just crazy with farmers dropping off produce going from different businesses on the market themselves, and then produce going out to the retailers and the restaurants throughout the region, the schools, cafeterias. So kind of an example of how this works among the rest of the distribution hubs or the other farmers markets in the Southeast and with our state farmers market system. So you have Atlanta, And if you kind of think of a spoke and wheel, maybe an even better way to look at it, Atlanta's that central hub. And then we have these other state farmers markets that kind of go around it. We have these regional distribution hubs like Augusta, Macon, and Savannah, where there may be some other produce distributors, but they're constantly buying and sending product back and forth to the Atlanta State Farmers Market. And then we have packing facilities as well, like in Moultrie or Valdosta or Cairo. For example, in Moultrie, they get a lot of these melons coming in and peppers and that sort of thing. So they'll be getting the trucks coming right off the farm. They'll be washed there and packed up in boxes, but a lot of that produce then comes up to the Atlanta market where it then goes out. So we have these kind of regional or smaller farmers markets that are providing a direct benefit to the farmers by allowing them to be their packing facilities. But then we still need the regional terminal market, the distribution hub in Atlanta in order to get that produce out there. One of the trickiest things with this farmers market, though, as we talk about all these different things and as we talk about how we plan for it for the future, is the competing goals that we have with the market. So we have this one market, but it's got to be several different things to many different people, right? So one of the things is it has to create jobs. It has to be an economic development force. And it's done a great job doing that. There's thousands of people that work at this market. There's hundreds of businesses that do that. But it also has to provide fresh produce. You know, we can't lease out large amounts of this market for other types of manufacturing or for, you know, a mall or a drugstore or something like that, because our goal is to keep this as a place that benefits farmers to help them distribute produce. But it also has to generate revenue. Again, we've been working at that revenue plus, that profit level for quite a number of years now, decades. We have to keep that revenue going. We have to pay for ourselves and probably then a little bit more. If we were able to, you know, not have to come up with the revenue that we do, we're able to fill the market a lot easier. But keep in mind, all of our cooler space in this market is leased out. There is a long list of tenants trying to come in and get cooler space at this market. So we have to generate that revenue while keeping a need for people to want to come here. But we also have to keep an eye on that food safety and aesthetic part of it. The state of Georgia is a landlord for these businesses that are employing all these people and doing all this business. These businesses have to meet food safety standards by third-party auditors in order for them to stay in business. So we have to make sure that the roofs aren't leaking and that the buildings are in sound conditions that they can meet these audits. The worst thing in the world would be for a company to have to close down or not be able to keep the businesses that they had operating because our buildings weren't up to code or our roof was leaking. So that's something that we have to keep up with. But then there's that aesthetic issue as well. You know, this has to be a place that people want to go to. We want it to be an agritourism location or some place that consumers like going to. So we have to keep that up as well. And with all of these competing goals that exist with this market, we're kind of pulled in different ways, and it's a balancing act to keep it operating this way. And so that's kind of a quick overview, I know, and then we can talk about this market and where it's been and where it's going. I know for days, but I don't know if y'all have any questions for me. And again, I'll leave my card, so if you can have any questions. And Commissioner Black just came in as well.
Hold on. So everybody kind of know the framework of how the committee is set up. So the questions will come from the committee members, and we will allow time for public comment. So if you have not signed up for public comment, there's a sheet in the back. Please do so. And it's asking everybody to sign up so we can keep you abreast of what's going on with the different meetings as well. And before we take a comment, we'll take a question from the committee members. I did want to recognize Commissioner Black, who's here, our Agriculture Commissioner. And I'm pretty sure he would probably like to have some remarks.
But if you please deal with that. I can wrap up when Matthew's finished.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, and I did, before we move on, I did want to recognize, we have a Chris lady here representing the city of Lake City is here. And we have Dr. Smith from Clayton County Public Schools representing Clayton County Public Schools. And we did have our other committee member to come and join us, so I'm gonna ask Representative Chairwoman Houston if she would introduce yourself, and then we'll move on with the program from there.
My name is Penny Houston, and I'm from South Georgia. I represent District 7, which is Berrien, Cook, and Tipp County, and it's rural Georgia, and we represent a lot of farmers, and we appreciate that. And I did represent Moultrie, which is Concord County, that you said was a happy share.
It's amazing in melon season.
It is amazing, and it is amazing the people that are coming to Georgia and South Georgia to grow produce.
All right, thank you. So welcome.
Thank you,
Chairwoman.
thank you
Glad
for,
that you're here.
thank you for doing this.
Thank you. All right, so we have a question from Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned that there's a 2.1 million delta. Is that pretty stable in profit from the cost to what it actually generates in revenue?
It is fairly, since we haven't been able to add additional cooler space or different space here, the amount of revenue that the market generates has been relatively stable, because it's based on these lease rates, some of them 2 to 6 year leases. But what's changed, if you looked at that graph, would be the operating costs. Because of budget cuts that occurred back in 2008, the amount of funding that we had to operate these markets has continually kind of gone down and then plateaued a bit. And it doesn't necessarily include some of the bond funding, since that is usually expensed over 30 years. We expense that a little bit differently. So I would say it's very stable now, or at least for the last 4 or 5 years. But in the past, it had, you see kind of a steep drop around 2000.
As far in the revenue or the operating costs?
In operating costs. Revenue's pretty much been the same for the last 10 years.
But the state has put a lot of money in here.
That's right, in the bond funding. The bond funding
Yeah,
has
we
been
still have to
very,
pay for
we're
those
very
bonds,
happy with the
you know.
bond funding. That's right.
A lot
That's
of
right.
money's been going in.
That's right.
So where does the
Absolutely right.
revenue go? Does it go to the general fund and then we create a budget item that gives you back your operating expenses?
Yes, sir. It goes to the general treasurer.
Is there a profit and loss that we could see?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I would like that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for any other?
First off, Matthew, you did a great job, like always, when I hear you talk. But the thing that caught my attention, and I didn't realize it, was the cooler space. And I did a little calculation, and when you get through with the 75,000 foot, that's gonna be 12.5 acres worth of cooling space. That's 13 football fields for folks that don't know how big an acre is. It's market, and I got a couple of little walk-in coolers at the house, and I'm running in them. And the expense that it costs to run a cooler out here is probably astronomical. So I really didn't realize it was that much cooling space on this property.
I'd like to make a comment too. Thank you, very, very well done. And for the others here, I just want to say a little bit more about how this market's changed. How, not this market, thank goodness, has changed with the distribution of fresh produce over the years. How it's evolved and how people get their fresh fruits and vegetables now. And, you know, delivery and so, it's got to be so quick, so fast, and turnaround time now. The large grocery chains were mostly, or for industrial food and that type of thing. It's just really got to be something that's got to be so quick now. It's just going to have farmers coming and harvesting them and then selling their product at a different location. Communication, I think, really helps that. Another one is food safety, and it's so important and so required by all the major retailers and end sellers. It's a really big part that you just, if you don't have that food safety component in your farm, you don't have outlets to sell your produce. So it's that's something that's changed in the last 10 years or 8 years. Important component.
To kind of follow up on what Robert's saying, the worst thing that can happen to somebody like Robert or me that sell a little bit of fresh produce is one bad peach or one bad ear cone. And you know, it used to be 10 years ago, you checked it parts per million or any kind of listeria or anything like that, not parts per trillion. So the scope of what can be found is getting a whole lot, well, it's getting a whole lot bigger because, you know, there's more ways to check for it. And the food safety aspect of anything from a restaurant to a farm is utmost important.
Yeah.
And what y'all do out here, that's probably the most important thing you do.
Well, and it's a lot of cooperation with our tenants, because they're the ones that have to deal with the audits, and they're the ones whose businesses are on the line for it. So we want to make sure that we can continue to provide them the facilities that they need in order to meet those third-party audits.
And I'd just like to say with the new FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act, that is a requirement for anybody who is distributing anything, is to be able to meet all the guidelines, the 7 guidelines of that federal regulation. And all it takes, because these are all independent companies here, and all it takes is one, slip up on that, and the retailer that you're going to no longer does business with you. So each one of these companies represents, we can pick any chain store that you go to, Walmart, Kroger, Food Depot, Whole Foods. Somebody on this market is sending their produce to those people. And now Sutherland's and Market Grocery are a little different. We're a full line food distributor, and we started as an egg producer. So we've had to change over the years to still be in business. And thankfully, we're in our 4th generation of leadership. So my father is still alive, and he represents 2nd, and I represent, along with my siblings, 3rd. And then my son and my daughter's children represent 4th. So we've been blessed to be able to be in this business, but we keep having to change with the times. So these buildings are not going anywhere. They were built in 1959, and if a tornado comes, we're good. Now, if the airplane lands on us, we're not so good. But, and we did have people that were thinking that was going to happen when we opened the loading dock and this new runway came through. The first day that the flights came over, we actually had people that, lay down on the floor because they thought the airplane was coming in our building. That's another issue. But we have to be able to be modern and up to date with our facilities, because it may have nothing to do with us, but we could lose our business just because a chain store says, well, they can't meet this guideline, or something here is not following the regulations. So it's very important that we keep in mind that each of these businesses represents lots of jobs and lots of revenue, not just for Clayton County and Forest Park, which is a blessing, but it represents stuff all over the United States and actually around the world, because we have things coming from around the world here, but we still have to follow those guidelines. So food safety is our #1 concern. And this market is different from the others that people have access to it. Most of the markets where all this food is coming in and going out, you can't get on the property because they're big guidelines. If you haven't registered with them, if you haven't paid fees to be someone to come and show them a product or that sort of thing, you're not driving your car on here. It's almost like at the airport when you pull up and stop, and they want to get you out from there because of safety concerns that you might have something that you don't need to have there. If somebody comes on this market and intentionally wants to do something, we're all at risk, okay, because this food is going around the world. So we just have to keep that in mind, that I think there's several things to be accomplished here, but this food that goes from here, it goes all over the world and affects lots of people. So we have to keep that food safety, I think, as #1 concern.
I don't want to leave off one other component of it, and that is people do want to know where their food comes from. Now, they do want to know that we'd like it to be fresh, local grown, and our Georgia grown program has been very good. And I think it's a good tie-in with this facility. that really complements that message we're trying to send in this state. And this hub here, and knowing that a lot of Georgia products come through here, sends a great message that this is a place to find local grown, Georgia grown fruits and vegetables. So it's both around in my mind.
Any other comments or questions from the committee members? All right. Thank you, Matthew, for your presentation. It was very thorough and answered a lot of questions that we might have, especially some of us who are not in the farming business. You come over here to consume, but not to do business. So it did open up a lot. This was how many businesses are currently operating here, and then also what are some of the future goals that are set forth here at the farmers market, which you talked about, the refrigerated warehouses that will be coming here. So thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation.
Thank you so much.
So at this time, I would ask Commissioner Black if he would like to give us some words on behalf of the Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see y'all. No, I'm gonna do this, that way my back's not to anybody, and so we can see everybody. It's just, that pacing back and forth between the projectors kind of, it's just better than, I'd love to see face one. Thank you, Madam Chair, thank you for arranging this, thank you for calling for this, and thank all my friends who agreed to serve, because this is a big job, and we've got that. It's not really not a more exciting opportunity. I think it's important. And to all of you, you are in this community. We're enthused by community involvement. It's a pretty cool thing to see. My colleagues up there, their colleagues in the House, Representative Carl Gaillard has a passion for the Savannah market. And Representative Gaillard, we've got 3 weekends of festivals at that market, and communities, we desperately need that there, just from the standpoint of people buying in. It's not so much about, when you say buy-in, it's not so much about money necessarily, but it's about involvement. And so when we can have a meeting like this and you exhibit your interest in being here, that's a big thing. I hope you're going to come to every meeting and make sure we're going to publicize them and make sure we have as much participation as possible. All of us are better than any of us. That's the way one of my best mentors taught me that a long time ago. And so we cherish the input that's going to take place. Let me touch base on a couple of things that are currently going on, but also come from a vision of where we started roughly 7 years ago. Because one of the first things we ever did here is when we got here 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago, the first thing we realized is that there was not one person that knew where the plumbing systems were in this 150 acres. I mean, there were no diagrams. There were no strategic thoughts about this place. It was plug and play thought when they went back to the legislature from time to time. So and so up here needed a cooler, so they go plug it in, but there was no strategic thought about how that ought to be matched together. One, for efficiency and use of taxpayer dollars, but two, for just efficiency, you really need to put that there. Where do we need to go? So we launched, and actually there was retained bonds funds, and we put $400,000 into a very, very detailed study, and had consultants to come in, and so that we actually have an understanding of the electrical grid here now, an understanding of the water and sewer, an understanding of all of those infrastructure needs, age of roofs, those kinds of things. these individuals have taken our, voted and working with the governor so now that we at least have got, Bonnie's still got, they've still got a roof issue, we're almost getting to, but it's a, most everything up here, that infrastructure, we've got a sound roof on it, so that we had to start with basics so that you didn't let this other thing just erode away. Yeah. The vision too was a footprint. What could this part of the market look like here? The hills up here, those buildings are pretty static. But down here, what can it look like? Because really, is this what our future is, or how do we prepare for the future? How do we change and ebb and flow for the future? How do we incorporate food safety and all those things into any type of other additional structures that we build? Because here's the thing that I hope that I think my friends up here may, and Madam Chair, we've talked about this, is that I remember being on this market when I was a kid too. I remember, I can remember, pick a day. If it's 1967 or 1962 when I was 4 years old, or I do remember that. I went to junior high here, I matriculated from the 8th grade at Mara Junior High School. Okay, so I remember all that. My dad ran the motor pool at the Army Depot, so we were in and out. It was a family thing. But back then, when farmers entered this market, they entered through the same gate that we have today. But largely what happened is when farmers came in this gate, they got up here to the hill, and many of them would turn left because they came here. The difference today, or the difference the last 12, 15 years, is that farmers still come here. This is still a farmer's market, but largely what happens is the farmers come in the front gate, the same gate, and they turn right. Because they're not coming with their campers, largely. Not, the produce industry has changed that much. They're not going to come stay 6 weeks and sell their entire crop here. That's not going to change. Doesn't mean there will always be a place on this market for Georgia farmers. Always. That's the mission. We don't abandon the mission. But you might, if you change some of the furniture in the room, which is what you're finally seeing out here. This lady right here chairs my subcommittee for appropriations. And she knows we've shared some frustrations together. 4 years ago, we got $9 million to build this building that's just started construction. There have been delay upon different components of the government, and really the last year and a half has been a priority because there's been so many construction things. Well, quite frankly, we were just put down the line a little bit, but hallelujah, it's underway. There's 70,000 here, and quite frankly, probably what you got in a strategic plan is about 2 more of those. Because that's where the business is, and that's where we need to serve. We still have the fresh market, but we got huge challenges with food safety. We cannot operate in a 1967 environment and think about that, and that's going to actually solve that incorporates itself with current food safety requirements. It's just they're 2 completely different universes. And I think there are a lot of good, faithful people that have been here for generations. But the facts are, much of what you see today, while there are retail customers, there are people like all of us that used to go, and still do. But there's still the vast amount of that business down here even is wholesale. Would you agree, Lon? The vast amount of, that's why you see the big truck that are in the aisles where it maybe used to be just cars. So it's actually a retail front, but much of the core of the business is wholesale. And that's the fuse on that moving forward is very short. To be able to operate in that environment in a wholesale, because quite frankly, it's not fair to everybody else who has to meet other objectives and other folks who don't. And that's not, then there's not that they're bad people, it's not, it's just that the infrastructure of the whole produce industry is not the infrastructure of our parents and grandparents. It's just not. Nor is it for the farmers. I mean, Robert Dickie got a peach packing shed. He can't even let his dog within 1,000 feet of it. I mean, literally, because of but yet we have open shed here that has lots of activity, and probably during the night. But it's just we have big challenges. And I want to thank y'all for investing your time, and we're going to get through these things together. I'm very excited about this 7,000 square foot. This is going to be great for Collins. We have folks standing in line want to do these another couple of facilities here. But I'll wrap up with this and talk about the challenges of building it. These 4 years that we've been waiting and continually knocking on the door and trying to get there. Well, see, they're kind enough, Governor put 2.4 in bonds in our package this year. And see, some of that we have to do maintenance and repair with that. It's not big construction. I will tell you this, and you've heard me say this. When we got here 7.5 years ago, they had 30-year bond money they're buying light bulbs with. They have money set in, right, Matthew?
Yep.
They had money set up in accounts that 20-year bonds. The state had borrowed money for 20 years, and they're using that money to buy light bulbs. So I want you to know our fiscal house is in order. I can't wait for you to look at that. Many of our markets across the state, 3 of them, we've got them out of the red and then into the black. Some of them will never make money, but we can ensure that they are losing less. So there's Cordell's one of those. It's not ever going to make money, but we probably knocked $100,000 off those expenses. So our fiscal house, I believe, we're ready for that inspection, and it can't, because we got a great storage there. But so for y'all, these are kind of some of the cards we get dealt from time to time too. And y'all voted on it, but you didn't know it. But I got the message when the little shell game started going on. I got this notice that, oh, by the way, your $2.4 million of bonds are not bonds anymore. They're cash. So when that came through in the budget, and our planning just turned upside down because we had bonds, but now we've got cash, and that cash has got to be committed between March and July 1st. Now, thank the Lord it happened, because our stinking 4 years worth of delays out here have made this building go up about $2.4 million. Now, the ones that made that decision didn't know that. That's okay. And that wasn't none of these. That was some other little inside baseball stuff. How that happened. But I'm thankful it did, because y'all know what we had to do? We had to do a quick focus with state and county, and just say, and with GISBIC, and I had to sign that whole $2.4 million over the GISBIC and put in the construction account before they would turn one spade of dirt. So we went through this budget process thinking that 2.4 going forward, when actually the 2.4 went back. Well, we got nothing going into fiscal 19. Now we got some of the retained bonds, and we'll be fine. We're good. We've got a plan, and we got good managers, and we'll get there. But and I'm sorry, y'all. That's more. that's probably more minutia than I'll say, but I just want y'all to know, our team works hard at this, and we do have a good plan, and boy, together, our best days are ahead, and I'm satisfied with that. And we're gonna make sure that Georgia farmers always have a place here, but this needs to be a vibrant, healthy, economic driver for Clayton County. And you just got to know, you got my word, we're gonna all work together to make that happen. So, the federal government has done another brilliant thing to farmers. They have made you put apparatuses on farm equipment that's reduced productivity of those tractors by 20% and raised their cost by 20%, and yet the emissions coming out the exhaust pipe is no better than it was when it started, but farmers like Robert Dickey still have to pay the freight. I've got 5 pieces of equipment up here, and I'm fixing to go get with the EPA because we finally got their attention that maybe off-road fuel we could get exempt from DEF. And it's called diesel emission fluid. Y'all know farmers now have a buy tractor, get 2.5 gallons of stuff and pour it into the tractor and try to correct the emissions. And then they leave a pile of plastic jugs that we've got to go put in the landfill. What sense does that make? But anyway, we've got them up on the hill. I'm gonna go see them, and because we got the deputy administrator of the EPA right up here. I got him cornered for about 45 minutes. So I'm gonna go get into that, and I'll be right back. We're on that. I'll pray for me that I control my mouth.
Well, thank you so very much, Commissioner Black, and for giving us a little bit more detail about the farmers market, actually laying the groundwork for what we're trying to do. And even when you think about the presentation that Matthew had given, one of the things that stood out was how everyone is dependent on this market. So it's not just here in Georgia, but even throughout the whole region. And even when you think about it, you think about even agritropolis. So everybody hears about aerotropolis. Even when we're moving forward with the farmers market, why not look at agritropolis? How do we build a city or build a community around this agriculture hub that we have here, which is our jewel in the state of the Atlanta State Farmers Market? And so we're going to move on to, I did see Senator C, she had come in. Okay, just want to recognize Senator Valencia C. She's also a part of our Clayton County delegation as well.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
gonna walk up there and try to keep
Okay.
Gary's mouth shut, and I'll be right.
Okay. All right, so next on the agenda, we're gonna stay as close as getting everybody out of here by 12 as possible. Next on the agenda, we have from the Georgia Farmers Overview. So I think it's important that we hear all aspects when it comes down to the farmers market. So I asked Mr. Keith Parker, who's president of Parker All Natural Growers Group, to also present to the committee from his perspective and those of the Georgia farmers that he's in contact with. Mr. Parker, please come forward with your presentation.
How's everyone today? There was a whole lot of points that was already touched on today. I'm actually one of those who's very proud of coming from a family of sharecroppers. That's how I was taught, brought up, and really still today proud of being such of. Some of the things that was talked about was how we can't do farming like our grandparents did or how we did in the past. So I'm like one of those ones who took heed to that. Went and did the training and continued the education in the process after I retired in 2009. Went back to the family farm to retool myself. So what I'm actually missing and part of this and what's going on today is connectivity within families and our communities, because we are doing very well with all of what we're saying here with the increased amount of product, the amount of monies that's going on, but what I'm really troubled about is that we are also, in that same time frame, we're creating what is now called food deserts. So I don't know, and when I grew up, I'm almost certain that the closest grocery store, and this is coming out of Brooks County, Georgia, it's Quitman, Georgia. Our closest grocery store was in Boston, and that's not Massachusetts now, it's Boston, Georgia, which was 17 miles away from our family farm. But there was no such thing as a lack of food for anybody that was in between them. So, so when we would get visitors, they would call, they would come and they would tease us, we'd get to talking about certain things, and we would share all of our joys, which was mostly chores. And they would say, you all, what are you doing all that stuff with? Y'all are poor. And we're like, oh, okay. So we all get together and we sit down, and then we've got this great abundance of food, which they couldn't understand where and how. Then we were able to supply all this stuff being poor. So my family and I, we just started to keep the connectivity as to then, how do we continue this tradition? Well, the first thing you got to do is you got to introduce it to your kids, and they got to put their hands on it. Because the whole concept of just going to the store or going to the market is just a fraction of what actually has to happen. So until we, I believe, reconnect our kids back to the process, I think that we're still troubled in many ways, although we are having great success. One of the potential solutions to this, because you can't come and make a statement and not have any sort of process in mind for it. I'd like to see more connectivity to the school systems from the elementary stage, with them putting their hands on seeds, potting soil, and also training them, because they're in the learning stages of their life, and teaching them about all of the necessary components for safe production of fruits and vegetables, which may help ease the burden on any and all of us as we move forward. Now, my parents, my dad is 90, my mom's 87. They can't physically do anything, but they were raised by my grandparents, who helped me with them having very little to no education, but they were able to come up with everything that was needed to send me and my other family members to college. So I think they got a lot to offer, and but physically, no, but in preparation, which means that we should be training the kids to just sort of lend a hand in this process. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm all done.
All right. Were there any questions from the committee members? I do have a question. Taken from, I know that we have our larger produce dealers here on the market, and take us from as a small Georgia farmer, okay, and the process of when if you come here, you want to sell your product. You kind of run us through that scenario, because I know as I come to the market, I don't see a lot of small Georgia farmers here. I know we have the large, but the small, and it might be my oversight. I just don't know what I'm looking for.
Due to a lot of the process, it's a little more difficult for a farmer to go from field directly into this market, because there's a process that you have to go through to get there, and normally they're shied away from the process. So if we then started to train better, meaning our kids, which would then relay that information to the household, probably in a way that they could be better understood, it will help us to get some of those adults better qualified to meet those things. Now also, locally grown things will be a lot easier to get to market, other than me talking about coming from Brooks County up here to sell every day. So what we have done here lately in Clayton County, and this process started in 2013, and I know it because actually I was one of the ones that helped draft the ordinance. As of before then, Clayton County didn't have no ordinances on the books that allowed local growing. Some people did, and unincorporated, where I'm speaking of, because it was going on some of the cities. But unincorporated Clay County had no ordinance on the book that allowed growing. And that would be one of the things that I believe that will help us to get more activity here once we've got that ordinance in place. And it was now in effect since 2017. Yes.
Are you saying you couldn't grow tomatoes in your backyard in town?
And bring them to market? No, you couldn't.
Of course, I live in Berrien County right now, in Brooks County, so you know.
Well, no, when we're talking about locally grown, now we're talking about here in Clayton County. is
Yeah,
where the ordinance
I
is.
know. The reason it's just surprising to me, I can relate to Brooks County because
Yeah.
I'm from Berrien County, right near you.
Know exactly where it is. Yeah, so as of that time frame, there was no ordinance that allowed that type of growing and distributing in Clayton County. So I'm happy to know that that ordinance has been accepted.
Scott, yes.
Thank you. You had said it's difficult for small farmers to get into this market, unless I misheard you.
No, it is difficult for small farmers to get in here because they're not totally understanding the process.
Okay, what is the process? Could you break that down for me?
The process is getting in, as they mentioned earlier, about how you have to identify with the farm. There's also the scrutiny that goes on with it, which is excellent. And also with that process, oftentimes the registration process is a little bit misunderstood. If that's, if that answers your question.
When you say misunderstood, say, I kind of break it down to, like I said, some of us are non-farmers, so we won't have it out here. So, say for instance, you have a load of product that you're bringing, you're 1 hour with Georgia farmers. You come, and I know they have the USDA is here, is checking and all that. So when you go through that process, is that the process that you're saying that is kind of different, knowing what the requirements are?
In most cases, small farmers are seasonal farmers. There's a planning calendar for each product. So in that time frame in which that product is planted, there is a harvest time. That harvest time, that window is short. We have to get it to the market, we have to get it sold. So if there is a overabundance of product that's already on the market, that product may not be allowed onto the market because of how it's governed. So when we're thinking 6 months prior, that okay, well, hey, my joy is tomatoes, and I'm gonna harvest all of these tomatoes, and my main focus is to bring it to the market. Well, the market may be at a point where they don't accept my tomatoes, or they don't fit the donut hole. You know, it's like sometimes if you go like these Walmarts and places like that, you know, if it don't fit the donut hole, it's rejected. Okay, and that's part of the process in which then this small farmer is put into equipment and all of the harvesting and the labor and everything. So now they're actually underwater. So as of late, USDA has also now, instead of trying to shore up these small farmers with loans, there's been a study that's been provided now that's offering grants, which may help in some of that process as well. Because, you know, prior to, you know, they'd go around and tell you, well, if you had 5 acres or less, they'll put a well on your property, but, you know, that well also costs, because now you've got to share part of that product with USDA as well, which gave some concerns to small farmers. So the commitment was, you know, it just needs to be better educated. The people need to be better educated. Because we're not asking for diversions around the process. We just got to make sure that we're articulating to these smaller farmers the opportunities and also the process.
I do. When you were talking about the ordinance that is required to allow people to grow, I need a little clarity. Was it to allow them to grow, or allow and provide the process for them to grow and it be called locally grown?
Okay, come on. So here is, let me split it up. There were people that was growing vegetables, but it wasn't through any guidance by the county.
So they couldn't be called a locally grown
That's
product.
correct. That's correct. So now to be able to be registered to come to the farmer's market, you needed that actual,
And the ordinance helps with that.
that's correct.
So, and then that allows them to now be able to sell the products and not just personally consume them.
Exactly.
Okay.
So now the effort is to get more local participation to fill the spaces that are going on out here where you have very few. Now, you've got a lot of international places out here where people, they got stuff from everywhere. But seasonal growers, there's very few of them, and it's because of the process, a lot of them.
So I don't know who to ask this, but I'm assuming that the utilization of the sheds because of this ordinance or lack of the ordinance has decreased over time. There's fewer farmers probably, the process has not worked for them to be local growers, and so the use of the sheds has decreased.
Matthew, you want to address that? Yes.
Can I mention that real quickly? So, thank you so much for your presentation, because I know that there's nothing more difficult than being a small farmer. I think that is such a difficult business to have. What we found over the last few decades is the number of small farmers in Georgia has decreased a lot, and that's part of the lower activity on the sheds. But really, when we work with small farmers now, what I find is the best way for a small farmer to sell their products is really three ways. One, that would be directly to the consumer at a community farmer's market. Unfortunately, a lot of farmers find that they can sell product directly to consumers at Peachtree Road Farmers Market or in Dunwoody at a higher rate than they can here on this market. Another way is selling directly to a restaurant. So as opposed to coming here and selling to a wholesaler who then sells it to the restaurant, they can get a better price by selling that product directly to that restaurant. Or the third way is with the CSA, or Community Supported Agriculture, and that's like a box program. So they'll have someone that pays them at the beginning of the year a certain amount of money, and they expect to receive a certain number of boxes throughout those periods of time. So I think the decrease in activity on our sheds has been less to do with the sheds being available or there really being enough farmers, and simply the changing way that farmers are selling some of their products. And you're right, it can be a very difficult process for a small farmer to do one of those avenues, because it's not easy if you're a farmer to go out to a farmer's market all around the city every day and be able to sell your products in people's neighborhoods. It's not easy to manage a CSA. It's not easy to coordinate with restaurants to be able to sell your products directly to them. But the sheds here, it's just been a change in the entire economy and the way produce is distributed. That being said, and I don't want to speak for too many of the wholesalers here, but I've worked with several wholesalers, and there's a huge demand for locally grown produce, especially when you talk about asparagus and strawberries and products that a farmer can produce at their farm and then sell to some of these distributors they want it. The biggest hurdle there for a lot of small farmers goes back to the food safety issues. And if you're going to sell to a distributor here who's then going to sell at a school or to a retailer or to a restaurant, a lot of times it has to be GAP, Good Agricultural Practices, certified. So you have to have a certified process in growing your products in order to sell them in some of those avenues. So that's another part of that process or that difficulty in selling produce to some of these vendors. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I found, just as somebody buying things retail, it's real confusing when I come here. I mean, I got lost trying to find this, and I've been to the farmer's market several times to find where y'all were. And is there any way that, what?
It's not the exhibit hall.
Yeah, that's what
No, this is not the exhibit hall.
No, I'm not talking about that.
But that's where we were sent.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't.
I'll address that.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't, that's not what, you're confusing what I said.
Sorry, Kim.
If we had, would it be easier if you were gonna buy retail, if you had signage telling you where to go and had the retail thing separated from the manufacturing?
Yeah, and a new signage system for the market would be very, is
And
very
have
neat.
different, come in, a different way.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's, to me,
That's
it's
right.
really confusing.
And I think in not only the Jacobs study, but also a study that was done previously, that I think you mentioned by ECOM, they recommended maybe changing the transportation flows where you have
That's a,
customer
well, that's
traffic.
an SAT, transportation flow needs to be worked on. Thank you, that's what I was getting at. I wasn't confused about where we had the meeting, I just, the transportation flow. And then that way you can separate the safety thing from retail thing, because I know just at airports, you have to be real careful about food you take in, and it's gonna get worse. We've just got to protect the market. And we wanna increase the retail sales and people to come here and buy more vegetables, but to me, it's confusing coming in with the transportation flow.
Thank you all.
Mr. Parker. All right, remember, if you will allow for public comment time for those who just walked in, there's a sign-in sheet on the table, and that's the sheet that we will go by, so if you would like to have any comments when we get to that portion, you're definitely able to do so. Next, we will have a presentation from Mr. Don, no, sorry, not Don, Mr. Brothers Don. Bob Burnett with Market Grocery. He'll be representing the Atlanta Produce Dealers Association.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Bob Barnett, Vice President of Market Grocery Company. We're a cash and carry wholesale company up in Building K on the farmers market. Appreciate the committee for putting this on and having us this morning. I'm the president of the Produce Dealers Association, have been for the last 3 years, which is an association here comprised of tenants not only on the market, but also affiliated businesses, as we talked about with the commerce that goes on here locally that support the businesses. It's approximately a little over 40 members currently. Like a lot of associations in today's time, it has been larger, upwards of 70, and as close as 5 years ago. Participation in those type associations seems to be a struggle. We're meeting like quarterly now. We were meeting monthly, say 3 years ago. We have our executive director, Tammy, who hopefully some of y'all have met today, who kind of oversees our day-to-day operations of the association, which is primary function is a face here in the not only this room, but the space there as you came in, which is what we call the Welcome Center and Gift Shop, and then managing the exhibit hall activities, and that's coordinating with the folks who are having the events and there for the facility here on the market, as well as guiding folks who are coming on the market, and she does a great job of that, and sends out a weekly newsletter of what produce is coming onto the market, of contacts that she's made, and folks are walking aimlessly as they come down the hill and don't know where to go. She's the face of that, I think, a lot of times, because the department's folks' offices are upstairs, and there's not really much interaction with that. So that's basically what the Produce Dealers Association does. It was formed kind of as a liaison years ago amongst businesses out here as a check kind of collection when folks back when you had bad checks written and were kind of getting issues. A couple of folks got together and said, "Hey, you guys want to start this association so we all don't have the same trouble with our customers?" And it's evolved over the years, just like the market has, just like our business has. So that's primarily the focus, and to help the Department of Agriculture when we need to kind of come collectively together to serve, as we all kind of are running different businesses and different aspects of businesses out here, to hopefully come together and work together and create a good common cause to move forward. So that's pretty much what we do. And if anybody has any questions about the business or what we do up on the market, we have to answer that as well, or any more about the produce.
I'd just like to add a couple more things to that, because we also serve as kind of a liaison to the community. Over the years, we have had to evolve to something different, and We work really closely with the Chamber of Commerce. We work really closely with the Department of Agriculture. We feel like we're kind of kissing cousins, I guess. And I know over the years, as you talked about education, even at our building, when we were in the egg processing division, or when that was our focus, we used to have every school system in Georgia, just about everybody would say, "Are you settling eggs? Did y'all used to be settling eggs?" And every school system would come and walk up to our, we called it our exhibition area, and you could look over into the warehouse and actually watch the process of the eggs being handled and how they got packaged and how they went to market. So we've always had children that didn't understand that things didn't come from the grocery store. You know, I mean, lots of us did have the pleasure of being able to grow up and watch things grow, which is a blessing. But kids today don't understand that process. And so over the years, the market has the produce dealers has helped with. We used to have children that came here all the time, and when we had the real downturn in the economy years ago, school systems didn't have money for bus rides. They didn't have money to bring the kids here, so that kind of stopped. But we still offer that service. Daycares, I think, are the ones we're kind of targeting now because they can get kids here a little easier than a big bus. But we can bring the kids here, and the market even has a little thing called the Fresh Express, and you can ride on a little wagon, motorized tractor and wagon around the market and see the products here. The problem is, as you talked about, getting lost. If somebody comes in and they don't know where to go, that becomes a real liability because we've got children or senior citizens come. I know lots of the churches around here in the area will bring their senior citizens on a field trip because everybody wants to go somewhere. And so this is a cheap field trip. You can just come to the market and walk around and see lots of interesting things, and they used to always make a stop at the restaurant. Not having a restaurant has been something that has deterred people from coming. They don't have a destination. But the safety here with trucks that are bigger than they used to be in areas that were designed for smaller vehicles, and now you have pedestrians trying to walk around in the middle of traffic and people not knowing where they're going. We have been very blessed. The Lord has shined on us that there has never, to my knowledge, been an incident here where someone has been harmed by that. But, people aren't paying attention to driving, as we know. That's why we have the new hands-free law with our cell phones. So if you have people that don't know where they're going, there's not good signage. You put pedestrians and trucks and cars all together. That is just the potential. I oversee the insurance at Sutherland, so I'm Debbie Doom is what they call me out there. But I'm always looking at all the potential hazards because today it is just something that we all have to be aware of. So education for our children is so important. But we work, like Sutherland's, we work closely, we try to work with the school systems, and I have been a mentor in the school system. We try to go to the days for going to talk about careers and the things that you can do in agriculture, all the different things that are available from farming to working in the warehouse to driving a truck. That's one of the bills we're trying to get passed now is to be sure that somebody at 18 years old can go and try to drive a truck now. You can drive all the way across the state of Georgia or up from north to south, but you can't go from Carrollton, Georgia over into Wedowee, Alabama. You can't drive, 10 miles across the state lines because that's against the law. But there are children and young people who could make a career. That's a big need in every industry that we have right now, truck drivers. So we need to help educate in lots of areas. The port is, has really enlarged, and I know you've all heard about that. Well, in Henry County, which is where I live on a family farm that my great-grandparents lived on, they have built all these warehouses. Now, they're not refrigerated, and they're not frozen. Bob has freezer at his building, and we have freezer here, and we could use 3 times the amount of freezer space and 3 times the amount of cooler space, but there's no place to expand. All the warehouses they're building in Henry County is to be like a middle point kind of. Things are going to come to the port, and then they're going to come to Henry County and be housed in big warehouses there. People can pick up their containers there instead of having to drive all the way to the port. What Collins is doing here is going to be for containers. So there's lots of opportunity for this market to make a lot more money in the way that most of the money is being made now. But you're going to need refrigeration, possibly freezer. There are only 2 big freezers that I know on the south side of Atlanta, and Sutherland's picks up a lot of things at freezers in McDonough because, Ore-Ida French Fries, or McCain, or Tyson Foods, or somebody that has frozen stuff, we have to go there and pick that up. So we send our trucks to pick it up and bring it here. There's lots of opportunities for monies to be made, and I think there's opportunities for us to work together. I just think that maybe the things that we want the community to come to, number one has to be climate control. Because out here, as Commissioner Black mentioned, you could have a dog or a cat or birds flying over this produce that is here unattended during the night. And it may be open 24 hours, but there's generally not sales going on 24 hours, okay? But the produce is sitting out there 24 hours. Now, at Market Grocery or Jardina or Collins or Sutherland's, our produce comes from the farm, and lots of times it came straight from the field. Sometimes it's already been processed and comes there to our different businesses, and it goes into a controlled environment. And then we have to say where it came from and what happened to it when it got there, and then it goes out to restaurants, hospitals, hotels, schools. It goes all over. So, you know, I think there is definitely, I love to go to farmers markets and fairs. I love to go to the fair in Perry. We just don't have that area here that is just for that consumer to be able to walk around, maybe eat some different things, having food trucks like Forest Park does right here in downtown Forest Park. So I think there's a couple different things, but you've got to get us a way in and out that's safe for the consumer. You have to make sure the food is safe. And most of the farmers, most of the sheds that are here that are occupied all the time are selling produce that they bought from somebody up on the hill. And that produce comes down and gets opened, and then you can buy, you know, a dozen tomatoes, or you can buy one little case, or and so you get to look at it before you buy it. But it's being bought from somebody up here. And the sad part is the front part where the sheds are now for the farmers. There's not many farmers that are coming. They're stuck in traffic on 75. The cost of diesel fuel, they can go to their local farmers market, or they can just go ahead and contract with somebody like some of these people or anybody else, U.S. Food Service or Cisco, or and lots of the produce here goes to those people and goes around the world. So these people here on the hill are packaging, producing, and distributing those things to lots of different companies that you have no idea that food comes from them. So we just have to find a way to work together, I think, to make it work for everybody. But you've got to have good directions. I came in the other night at 9 o'clock in the evening, and as I'm coming in the main entrance, because at night it's controlled, the far gate up there is closed, and the one down here by the garden center is closed, so you come in the main entrance. I'm coming in, and somebody's coming out the end. And so, you know, flashing lights and trying to tell them, you know, you're going the wrong way. Well, they're trying to figure out what this crazy woman is doing, and they don't even let the windows down because they're scared that something bad's going to happen to them. But people don't understand how the traffic flow works. And even if you've been here a long time, sometimes you don't know how the traffic flow works because the stop sign got moved as a prank, or it got knocked over by a big truck that didn't make a wide enough turn because there was cars parked in an area where they shouldn't be. So it's just, it really is a hazard for lots of things that, just because, and it's nobody's fault, it's just that this market has grown so much and so many things have changed. But since 1959, this place hasn't changed. You know, the perimeters and the walkways. There's not really any walkways, and if you just go through there, you can see that the roadways are difficult. It used to have trains coming through here. Thankfully, the trains are just up at the top part of the market now, but we actually have train service into here. So the rails come and bring different products as well. So it's just a lot of different things going on. But it could be the potential for disaster if we're not careful what we try to put here. So I'm all for small business. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for small business. So, and again, most of the companies up here are owned by families just like yours that are trying to figure out, do they go to the next level? Do they stay here? Do they build something new somewhere else? Because if we can't keep up, then, with the guidelines, then we have to figure out what we're going to do. So it's just a lot of things to consider when we talk about changing the market. And I think there's been some great things that have been brought up here today that we all have to be involved in it, from education, and we can find ways to do it before we can get, the kids here maybe. Just volunteer in your school system to go tell them about how the farming works. works and, you know, what opportunities there are for you. So we also work with, the Department of Agriculture worked with UGA. We've had the pizza farm here a couple times, so if you ever see that advertised, that was an amazing thing that happened in the exhibit hall where they brought a real cow. They showed how the cheese comes from the cow, and then the cow can become the ground beef on the pizza. That's kind of disturbing, but but they tried to show the children how the whole process works, and they brought kids from all over the state here to actually see that presentation. So there's some really good things that go on here. It's a shame that more of them can't go on, but we don't have parking for the exhibit hall anymore because there's businesses all around there. So if you park, now Tammy could better answer that, but on the weekends when we have bird shows, reptile shows, gun shows, we have had a cat show, we have had, I don't think we've ever had dogs, we have fish, we've had fish something, we have weddings, we have lots of different kinds of things that go on in the exhibit hall, so lots of people from the community in the area come and utilize that building. But again, there's still some issues, and I see our Forest Park Police Department does a great job, but that's some of the main issues that they deal with is how do you get people in here and how do you get them out safely? Because there's just, there's always somebody running a stop sign or going the wrong direction, and they work so well with us and try to give everybody one free ride, but it's again, it can be very dangerous having all these different kinds of modes of transportation in here. There's forklifts that actually ride from one area of the market around. Now, if you're under the sheds, you have to watch for them. They may be transporting things from one shed to another, and if they're behind a big truck that's parked, you may not see them. It's just a really, it's very exciting and different. There's a lot of people watching that you can do if you sit out here and just see how many people come through here. But there's lots of things that need to be kind of shored up to make sure that everyone is safe. The food, the people, and the visitors to the city.
All right, thank you so much, Bunny, and thank you, Bob, for the presentation. And that kind of cleared up a lot of things as well. It gives a better understanding of everybody's role here, right at the farmers market. So thank you, Bob. All right. So next, we're gonna now actually open up for public comment. And we do want to acknowledge our Forest Park Police Department. They do an excellent job with safety. All right, so for the public comment time, no more than 3 minutes we're going to ask, and then if there's anything else that you didn't get a chance to say and you want to put it in writing, make sure you see Morgan, and she can maybe give you an email address to be able to send those comments to, because like I said, our job today, for those who came in a little bit late, for the next meetings that we have, is for us to gather information and to be able to make a recommendation. We're not making any decision on yes, no, maybe so, but to make a recommendation to the Speaker's office, and then from there, we'll see where it goes from there. So that's our primary job for these next couple of meetings. All right, so next, and if I mispronounce your name, you're going to have to correct me. Fredolyn Frazier, will you please come forward?
Do I need to stand up here or?
Yes, and just so everybody know, we are live streaming and it is video tape.
Well, Chairman, Stovall, committee members, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Fredolyn Frazier, and I serve as the interim planning director for the city of Forest Park. And an interesting note is I was the project manager for that particular master plan, so I want to offer some insight on that master plan that was developed about 12 years ago, because I think a lot of the items that you mentioned also are still relevant today and were captured in that master plan. So I do encourage everyone to look at that, because there were about 3 major concepts within that master plan that we thought were really critical in terms of the efficiency of the market, and one had to do with transportation. And right now, because you have the mixed modes of transportation, how do you begin to separate that, right? So we need to make sure that pedestrians have a way. We also incorporated cyclists as well. And how do you separate the trucks from there? So within that plan, it shows how you may go about separating that traffic from creating a more safer environment. The other thing is when you look at the wholesale use and the retail use, they're not competing, but you have these other activities on this site that you want to accommodate. Wholesale has totally different needs that we heard a lot about today. The retail is going to appeal more to your local residents who would like to see that type of function still continue here. In the plan, we looked at some of the ideas of how you begin to close off those retail areas to make them safe for public safety in terms of the health reasons, the health manners behind that. So within that, you want to make sure that with the sheds were closed off, we identified areas not only for retailers, local produce providers, and then having your wholesale on the other side. The plan also addressed the educational piece because we thought the plan really came from the community, let me say that first. So there was an extensive public engagement component as part of that plan, and so they provided information on how they would like to see the retail side of the plan operate. So within that, there was a huge, I would say a significant level of appeal for having more public educational facilities here, to actually having a hall to leverage the activities that you have now, but to have a designated area where those functions could occur. From a planner, one of the things that we would like to see from the City of Forest Park is connectivity. This is a unique opportunity here because of this market, that we want to not just focus inwardly, but we need to look outside as well. So you have Airtropolis, you have the Fort Gillum, you have the Fort Gillum Logistics Center down here. How do we begin to make that connection? And it's not only going to benefit just the city, but it benefits the region. And we want to be able to promote that pedestrian activity. We want to have that connectivity from the Gillum Center to the farmers market, to the airport, and we want to make sure that that is maintained as well. Not even maintained, but enhanced. So right now you don't really see a lot of that. So when we step back, I would encourage the committee, as you take comments from the public, that big vision in terms of how does this fit into the grand scheme of this environment? How does it connect to the airport? How does it connect to the surrounding communities? How does it connect to Fort Gillum? And try to leverage those partnerships with those entities. As we mentioned, Fort Gillum already has a logistics center out there and has over 1 million square feet out there. Maybe there are partnerships there that you can explore. But we certainly want to see the farmers market look beyond its walls here and not just inwardly, and see how you can connect to the community as well. That was my time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Frazier.
Can we ask a question?
No, go
Wait till later.
No, you go ahead and ask.
I'd like to ask you a question. It really occurred to me why you were saying that. I really appreciate that. But is this location really the best place for education, for bicycles, for retail, for that type of thing in Forest Park? I mean, I kind of question whether this location and what goes on and what always will go on is a good mix for that. It might be another place in Forest Park that would be more safer, accommodating, more easier to get to than this location.
Now, when you look at the evolution of markets, I know that you were focusing on what's coming from the farm and on the whole side, but when you begin to look at how you may be able to combine this with farmers markets like a Seattle market, why won't we look, at a big picture? Why can't this be a regional attraction where it's like a Seattle market? So you have the ability, if you're looking at that, you can have the retail function, you can have the wholesale function. Why separate the two? Because they work off of one another right now. And then being able to layer that educational piece on there would be also another way to really enhance the whole experience. So you're talking about agritourism. You have the wholesale side, you have the tourism side. And then you have the locally serving side.
You mentioned, you're probably mentioning Pike's Marketplace. Have you been there?
Yes.
In Seattle?
Well,
I've never been, so.
yeah, and our consultant on here had, we brought in a national expert on public markets, and he actually had designed, had hands in designing Pike's.
So, okay, so is Pikes, I've always imagined it is in the middle of a urban area. What are some other differences that Pikes has compared to what we're doing here? Do they have like a hill where they're doing a lot of wholesale action there, or is it really the touristy?
No, the whole idea was not to replicate another market, but to locate that type of function here at the State Farmers Market. So this would be something totally unique. And that's why we put a lot of effort into identifying how you would separate the different types of traffic, because you would compartmentalize that. You wouldn't have wholesale encroaching on a retail locally, portion of the, or locally run portion of the market.
So when you look at the market here, in comparison to places that people in the area generally frequent, is this close by in the center, separated from, like, can you walk from here to a neighborhood?
No, that's why we were saying the connectivity needs to be there. The pedestrian.
And I'm assuming, so I want to verify this, but I'm assuming that from your questions, you were wondering if this ought to remain industrial and move the marketplace maybe closer to the people, or just a thought?
Yeah, I don't know, you mentioned bicycles. How far?
Oh, well, I just mean in terms of accommodating that. You want to be future thinking in terms of how your facilities are designed. And so if you're going to have a retail section, I'm not saying that you're going to mix bicycles with wholesale, but if you have a retail portion of the market that's open to smaller farmers and to the local community, how they access that would be different than from
Let me
where
ask you
trucks
this way.
come.
How close are we to the nearest population center?
Very close.
You're sitting in it. Am I a walking distance?
Yes, you are.
Okay, because I'm from Cherokee County, so I don't know. So,
All right, thank you.
yeah.
Individuals coming here would not be an issue. I mean, cycling is just one layer of modality, but what we're saying is you need to separate your heavy truck traffic. Is it clearly evident from what Ms. Bonnie, I forgot to know your last name, has stated, that there's a challenge there. So that was a key feature, of the plan, is how you begin to separate that heavy traffic, implement wayfinding so people know where they're going, identify facilities that would be educational, and have that retail component as well.
So what I would do, if you don't mind, because we have some more meetings that we're gonna have, we actually gonna kind of break down, go into, because we're gonna have someone from the Conventions Bureau on one of the, during the presentation, we're definitely gonna have City of Forest Park. So we can kind of get more in depth into that aspect of it, if you all don't mind. Did you still have something you wanted to say?
No.
Okay. All right, so thank you, Ms. Frazier, for that, for the comment and answering those questions. Okay, next we have Rob Leatherwood, Clayton County resident.
I'll stand to the side, so I'm like to look at everybody. So, Rob Leatherwood, Clayton County resident. I kind of, the main point I was going to mention here was what Mr. Frazier kind of mentioned and what Bonnie alluded to, was just the aesthetics of the area. To me, it doesn't seem like it's very consumer friendly, again, with all the heavy traffic and things coming in. And so, the perception that I get from people, when my wife and I got married, I said, hey, let's go to the Atlanta Farmers Market. And she goes, well, that looks old. That looks like something that my grandfather might have went to. And so, with that, if we have things where we can offer seasonal items to consumers, and then it'd be better advertising, right? So we have locally grown Christmas trees, maybe, or pumpkins, things that can, and to me, the best way to advertise that would be in the school systems. And so you give that to the children, and the children take it to their parents, gives their parents an option to bring them down here and kind of be a part of it, put their hands on it, to touch it, and feel it. The other thing I was curious if this board was going to do, I know y'all mentioned like the Peachtree Road, farmers market, looking at different ones. One of the ones that I have frequented quite a bit is the DeKalb Farmers Market. That is heavily consumer based because they have a massive controlled environment for consumers to come in and buy, especially organic. You can pretty much get anything organic from the DeKalb Farmers Market. And being that they've been so successful, they're expanding to a 1 million square foot facility there on their grounds. So apparently they have a model that appears to be working, and that they're actually meeting the demands of the community. And so I know a lot of people from Fayette County, Coweta County, Henry County, Cobb County, that drive to the DeKalb Farmers Market. And so if we have something like that here that we can offer to those residents, then that's more business and more revenue that we're keeping locally here. The other thing was, and I know that Matt had mentioned it, talking about CSAs. So I actually have a cousin that has a farm down in Sharpsburg. We're part of their CSA, again, Community Supported Agriculture. What they do is great. Not only are we supporting them and able to get locally grown from there, but they offer a lot of classes. So they do a lot of canning classes. They do farm to table, where people actually come into their farm, they go out, they pick the vegetables, they come right back, they have a little campfire with a stove, so they're able to cook it, and they understand the whole preparation. I know they have the pizza thing for the kids, but I think to be able to bring kids and families in and have them choose things within the farmer's market and have a class that kind of shows them how to cook the food, how to prepare it, how to preserve it. I'll give accolades to my cousins because they were actually chosen by an international group to go to Italy to perform a slow cooking seminar as part of a lot of initiatives that Europe is doing about promoting fresh produce and farm-to-table initiatives. And then the last thing that I was going to mention is kind of based off what Keith Parker said about locally growing in Clayton County. There's an actual farmer, for those of you that live in the area, that lives over on Bethsaida and Collier. And so he has a little farm and he tries to sell to the community. My understanding was that the county made him build a enclosed farm stand that was handicap accessible and had to have bathrooms, but they wouldn't let him put any signage up to advertise his farm. And so he essentially had to close it down and go down to an empty Bank of America to try to sell some of his stuff. The other thing about him is he's just around the corner from E.W. Oliver Elementary School. So to maybe, again, with local farmers, get them engaged with the schools. If he's that close, get him in the school, have him show the kids where the food came from, maybe create a community garden there at the school. But again, getting people involved locally and not try to necessarily turn them away, but to be able to work with these local growers to encourage them and to get them not only invested more in the county and in the community, but to get the county and the community invested into them.
Was that a local ordinance that the guy had to put in handicapped bathrooms and all that?
I'm not sure if it was a local ordinance. I just know that somebody from the county told him that he had to put that in. So, but I'm curious.
Actually, you were out earlier. There was no ordinance.
And I apologize, EPA is up there, and they got it cornered to try to let us not get so many Mexican blueberries on this market right here in Georgia growing stuff. It's just a whatever.
And we're all for it. We're with you on that. Now, there was no ordinance as far as unincorporated Clayton County that exists up until here recently. Actually, there was a push in 2013 to create an ordinance that would allow for local growing in unincorporated Clayton County. Now, maybe some of these cities were able to do so, but the way that the county is so cut up, it was just confusing for everybody, to tell you the truth. So I know that in 2017, there was an amendment, and also there was a creation of a urban market concept that is now a ordinance in unincorporated Clayton County.
I know where I come from, we sell fresh produce, and my biggest headache is trying to figure out, and sometimes you gotta do paperwork, to decide whether somebody's, what you charge local sales tax on and what you don't. That's the biggest headache we have, as far as whether somebody's taking 100 dozen ears of sweet corn to sell them, or whether he's taking them home to put them up. And there's a difference in how you gotta do stuff. And then you gotta do paperwork so your income don't make you have to do it. Like Bonnie didn't do. I never have heard of not being able to sell produce that you grew on your farm on the side of the road unless it's some old got possessible bells.
All right, next we're gonna hear from Keith Horton, Clayton County resident.
My name is Keith Horton, I'm a Clayton County resident, and I just want to piggyback off what Rob talked about as far as a couple of things. With the school system having a partnership, I'd like to see a partnership with the school system, whether it be an MOU or MOA-driven partnership where there's an initiative where you have farmers that either come out to the school system, to the schools, and one of the unique things about having farmers come out to educate our students about growing, one of the interesting things that is relatively new is the aqua system of growing. And so that is a very unique, that doesn't take much space, it takes a greenhouse, and our students can learn how to grow fresh produce and products. The second thing is what Keith Parker talked about, is our food deserts. And I think that's one of the things that we do a great job of providing, and Commissioner Black has done a great job, but we have missed out on the food deserts that are in the Clayton County area as well as Atlanta metropolitan area. And so one of the things that we want to look at is could we devote or allocate funding to go to fresh produce to go to those food deserts. Division of Aging Services has a map for the state of Georgia that has all the food deserts in North Georgia, food deserts in metropolitan area, Atlanta area, as well as South Georgia. So that's one of the things I would look at. And then the last thing is SNAP marketing. What are we doing to market the old food stamps at the farmer's market? It used to be a 2-for-1 deal. I'm not sure it's still a 2-for-1 deal, but it's a great opportunity to market to those individuals who have food stamps or EBT card to come out to the farmer's market. That way you can generate a little bit more money as well. So those are my three suggestions.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, next we have Mr. Mickey Garber, Clayton County resident. 3 minutes if you can, Mr. Garber. I know you got a lot to say.
When does my 3 minutes stop? Welcome everybody and to you all. There is only one thing worse than being blind. It's having sight with no vision.
Well,
you mentioned about this farmer's market and the great possibilities that can happen. You used your concern of safety. Let's face it, people, we harness nuclear power. We send people to the moon and get them back. We can work safety around this market. Economic development. Why do you think Porsche Motor Company built a big facility with a racetrack so close to the airport? Atlanta may be the gateway to the south, but Clayton County and my Georgia is the gateway to the world. Boy, I lost my place. In Commissioner Black's statement, in all due respect to the man, he was discussing economics and talked about other farmers markets being in the red, and he used the statement, I got them out of the red and into the black. That could be noted as bad connotation and people could take it wrong, and you need to go back and tell them about it. As far as Mr. Matthews and his presentation, and he had those carrots up there, I envision that them one day will be Vidalia carrots. Thank you. First, I'll ask the board, do you have any questions?
That's my job, Mr. However, if you think of something else, we have about 3 more meetings, so you're welcome to come back again.
Okay, aren't you gonna ask the audience to?
So, yeah, so that's why we had the public comment time. And then, after you make your public comment and someone collaborates with you, then at the next meeting, you can get up, or before the meeting, you might want to come and talk to one of the committee members, and you're able to do that.
Thank you, ma'am. I take direction very well.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Garber. All right, next we have Hannah Palmer from Finding the Flint? Okay,
Yes,
all right.
I'll just sit right here.
Well, come up, because we're televising, so we want to make sure.
My name's Hannah Palmer. I'm with an organization called Finding the Flint. But before I talk about the Flint River, I just want to say that I'm a big fan of the State Farmers Market. I grew up in Forest Park. I had one of my first jobs at Sunny East. So I have worked on the hill and I have shopped down in the sheds most of my life. And I'd like to reinforce just the concept of joy and fun and discovery that the market has been for generations. I still bring my children here to get our pumpkins and our Christmas trees and our roses and our flowers. And I've been saddened over the last few years to see the things that I love about the market on the decline. That includes the restaurant, fewer and fewer retail, local sheds, fewer even Christmas trees and pumpkins. I'm seeing less and less of that. That's alarming and sad to me because it's been a real joy to experience that and to share that with my kids. They've done the little train, they've met the cow, and they're city kids. I want them to have some connection to where their food comes from. So I'm here just as, I live in East Point now. I've lived there for 10 years, but spent most of my life in Forest Park. And I'm here to be a voice for the community, that this place can be not only a job creator for the community, but really contribute to quality of life. And it's a real mark of pride for being from Forest Park and being able to call this market our own. The other thing I want to tell you about in the 3 minutes I have is I have been recruited to work with an organization called Finding the Flint. This is sponsored by the Flint Riverkeeper, which is based down in Albany, but also by the Aerotropolis Alliance and Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. It's an effort to find and restore the Flint River headwaters that flow all around this area. Many people don't know that the Flint River starts in East Point and it's piped for 2 miles into the airport. It's largely hidden from the landscape, and part of that is because of the airport's growth over the last 50 years. But right downhill from us here is Mud Creek. That's a major tributary to the airport. And this is important to the farmers market. The farmers market is 155 acres of impervious surfaces and concrete right at the headwaters of a very significant regional water source. So you may have known or heard that last Thursday during heavy rains, the bridge over Upper Riverdale Road flooded, cutting off access to Southern Regional Medical Center. That's because during heavy rains, 2,000 acres of this industrial district that is not coordinated, that's all connected, that halo effect is a concrete effect. So that stormwater issue that the farmers market is part of affects Mud Creek, which floods downstream, and then we have people who can't get to the hospital when they have an emergency. So I'm throwing this curveball at you that like stormwater, green infrastructure needs to be part of the conversation when we talk about any redevelopment on this site, and it needs to be coordinated because even if the state farmers market does a great green redevelopment, it needs to be coordinated across this entire industrial district so that we can start to save the Flint River. It starts here, it's our river, but it goes all the way down through the state, and it's feeding our agricultural industry downstream. The Flint is a water source that we have the opportunity to protect and highlight here as part of what we're doing at the farmers market. Thank you.
All right, next we have Brenda Harrison, Clayton County resident.
Good almost afternoon, everyone. I guess what I'll do is start with, we keep telling these guys what they can do for us. Let's just say not only what you can do for us, but what we can do for each other. Because this is a partnership, and to make it work, we have to work together. One of my major concerns is not only locally grown produce, but how is it locally grown? I'd like to be able to come to the market and know that natural produce is here, the produce that gets insecticides and fertilizers and chemicals, over there. So I make sure I don't go over there. So I like to make sure that the produce is identified properly and that the growers are transparent to the consumer. Don't say you're all natural when you've already sprayed it down with some bug spray. So just be transparent to the consumer. The next thing is marketing to wholesalers in the community spaces. I'd like to see these desert spaces you guys are talking about become community markets for produce, and that those small developed businesses come here, purchase their produce, wholesale prices, and take them to the community. That keeps them from having to travel here to Forest Park, and some of them don't have transportation, but we can take this to the community along with the education prospect that some of the people here spoke about. And last but not least, partnerships. You guys can't do it without us, we can't do it without you. So I appreciate Chairperson Stovall for being in charge of this committee, bringing it to us, making sure we stay engaged, and we're going to make sure that we spread the word to the community that this is real, this is not just play, fake news and all that other stuff. We're going to make this thing happen, because I remember, I'm an Atlanta girl, I remember the Forest Park market back in the day, and I miss that. Being able to come here and, you know, on Sundays we knew we could negotiate because they be wanting to go home and get rid of their produce. But please, let's make this viable, because this is an amazing product. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. All right, so we're at towards the end of our agenda, and we definitely thank everyone for coming out, the committee members for traveling. A lot of them travel very far to get here. And also for the Department of Agriculture, Bo Warren, and the Commissioner Black's office, and Matthew for his in-depth presentation that answered a lot of questions. And also to Mr. Keith Parker for shedding us light from the Georgia farmers' perspective. And also Bob and Bunny for representing the Atlanta Produce Dealers Association to bring to light some of the things we might not even thought about. We just know we're coming over here, but we know we had a lot of issues with transportation and signage, like Chairwoman Housing has brought up as well. And so so you want to know the next step. So after this meeting, we have scheduled 3 more meetings, and we did have a flyer that's on the table in the back, so you kind of know where it is. And I do want to apologize for the mix-up in the location. It did originally, when we set it out the first time, it had the exhibit hall, and then we were informed that the exhibit hall was booked. So then we ended up having it here in the conference center. So the plans for September the 12th meeting is to come back here to the conference center. So if you all can spread that word, we really would appreciate it. And I thank my legislative colleagues for coming out, and even our local city government for coming out as well. And I did want to kind of give you a heads up for the next meeting. We would dive into, when we talk about economic development, public-private partnerships. You know, we already have that going on here, but how can that, possibly be expanded? Also, you talk about education. How can we incorporate the education our students, especially our urban kids that don't have really accessibility to a farm? And then when you look at also economic development training, what does that look like for future workforce for here at the farmers market? And so those are, and of course tourism is always at the heart of everything. So those are some of the things that we'll be discussing in the next couple of meetings. And just so you all know, for planning purposes, our last meeting is October the 2nd, which at that meeting we will be, hopefully have gathered enough information that the committee will be able to make our recommendations at that time. So like I said, if you have any other things that you want to add in, please encourage everybody to go online to do the survey. That helps us a lot as well, that I'll be able to share the results with the committee members as well as to what is being said for those who couldn't make it to the meeting today. And so I did want to also mention that we've also been able to work with Clayton State University. So one of the meetings on the 27th will be at Clayton State. And their MBA students last year, November, actually did a market analysis of the state farmers market. So that means we'll be able to hear from them, hear from the professor on what those conclusions were. And I know we're going to all come to the conclusion that all the research and the analysis have come together, all saying the same thing. So what everybody's been telling me is, okay, when are we going to move the needle and get some things done? We talk and all of that, and we kind of know what's needed, what's the next step. And so that's our job as a committee, is to make those recommendations and then see how we can help move the needle forward for what we're going to do here. So I did want to share with you on some of the things as we close out. For some, we've actually gotten 285 responses so far online with the survey. And so I'm going to share some of the responses. So 79% of the people who responded said they come to the farmer's market to purchase fruits or vegetables. 41% out of the responses were flowers and related products. 13% non-food items. About 24% ate at restaurants, and then we had an other selection that was on there. And one of the other first question was how many visit at least once a week. So out of that response, you had about 7% said they visit at least once a week. Once a month was 21%. Twice or more a month were 8%. And once or more a year were like 61%. So as you can see, a lot of people not coming once a year. So we want to get those numbers where we have more people visiting more frequently than what's going on now. The third question was, what type of business or activities would you like to see at the farmers market? So on that response, indoor market was at 75%. Outdoor market, 57, Wi-Fi cafe, 42, cooking demonstrations, 52%, concerts, 27, fairs and festivals, 71, shopping center, 23%, boutiques, 25%, logistic training facility, 13%, education center for students to learn about agriculture, 55%. Agriculture museum, 32%. And then we had some other responses. And then also on the survey, for those who haven't completed, we gave an opportunity for people to give comments about what things they wanted us to know that was not included in the questions. And so out of that, about 171 people actually wrote in their comments that will be shared with the committee. So just kind of give you a heads up, everybody's really excited about what the possibilities here at the farmers market, and we're really excited. I appreciate the opportunity to be among my colleagues to be able to help foster this and move this forward. So if nothing else from the committee members, this meeting is now adjourned.